again. Welcome to the League's World Soccer Podcast. I got the Cooligans here, and they have a TV show on Fubo. They also have the podcast as well, soccer comedy. And so, how did you come up with the name, the Cooligans?
Before we actually started a podcast, I had been wanting to do a soccer podcast or something else. And I reached out to a few friends, and one of my friends was like, all right, yeah, let's do it. And we were coming up with names, and I was trying to like wordplay, and we were just brainstorming, drinking too much caffeine at a coffee shop. And I said, instead of hooligans, what about Cooligans? And he was like, that's the worst name I've ever heard of. That's so stupid. And I kind of wrote it down because I'm like, I don't know. I love it. You know, I know everyone hates it. Everyone I told after that hated it. And he ended up getting a job at Comedy Central, so he couldn't do the podcast. And it sat on the shelf for a year. And then when Christian and when I convinced Christian to want to do a podcast, it was pretty easy. I was like, yo, dude, we should do a podcast, because people around us were kind of like laughing while we were at the game. And he was like, yeah, I'm down. He goes, but we got to think of a name. And I was like, what do you think? I'm like, just off the top of my head, what do you think of Cooligans? And he goes, oh man, it's so bad, it's good. And I was like, yeah.
So it's a mix between comedy and hooligans?
Pretty much. No, just like cool. Yeah, just like instead of, being like aggressive like a hooligan, it's just like, no, we're like that. We like soccer, but we're cool about it. That's all.
Yeah. But we should have went with the Chooligans or the Chilligans.
But when he mentioned the name, when you're starting a podcast, usually the one of the toughest parts is naming it, right? Like people take a lot of time doing that. And there were so many other things that we had to do that picking the name was like not a thing I wanted to spend any time on. So I'm like, all right, whatever. Maybe the name will change if it doesn't stick or whatever. But I'm like, I don't want to fight this fight, because the name was just like so silly at first. And then over time, it was just like, we just embraced it and we leaned in hard, and it's kind of, worked out.
All right, so taking a step back, I wanted to ask this first, actually, but how did you get into comedy? Because I became a huge fan of comedy. I think even in high school, one of my teachers showed us Monty Python, the Holy Grail in like 9th grade. And then even, growing up getting picked on, I think that's kind of how I sort of became sort of funny, even though I'm not a comedian. I'm like funny in my circle. But how did you guys, what kind of pushed you into comedy?
Well, let's start with, your circle isn't important. We're professionals. No, only kidding. I think that's how most comedians start, right? Like something happens that triggers something in your brain that says, I also want to be funny. For me, when I was a kid, I remember, Latinos throw parties really late at night, and the kids have to go to sleep at some point, but they just keep partying as if we can sleep through all the noise. And I heard people all laughing at the same time and then stopping, and then all laughing at the same time and stopping. It just seemed odd. It wasn't a party. It seemed like they were watching something. I was a child. I was maybe 6, 7 years old, maybe 5. I don't remember. But I remember going downstairs, and I opened the door to my kitchen. My kitchen door swung both ways. So I pulled it back a little bit, which is like, when you're a kid and you hear people arguing, that's how you sort of see it. If you open it, they'll notice it. But if you pull it. And I saw my grandfather standing at the sort of at one end, and everyone was watching and listening to him tell a story. And there were funny moments, and everyone was laughing at the same time. And I thought, wow, this guy's got complete control of the room. And that for me was it. That's all I ever wanted to do after that moment, was just make people laugh. And then, you grew up in a rough city. I'm fat and slow, so it had to be funny. That's how you get gangs to not hate you or want to kill you. And when I got laid off from corporate America, my wife looked at me and she's like, well, you're getting a severance package, so go do what you've always wanted to do. The next day I did an open mic, and I never looked back.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm also fat and slow.
Yeah. What a change of life.
No, for me, it was, I have an older brother, 8 years older. So because of that age difference, it was like I was always kind of ignored as a kid because while he's a teenager, I'm like a baby. And it was like once I became a teenager, I just wanted to be like, fit in with his friends, and if I made them laugh, it was like I wasn't sent back to my room and things like that. So I started getting. He was already into comedy. George Carlin. We would always watch comedy specials just regularly. And then by the time I got to high school, I was already like obsessed with late night television, Conan O'Brien. I was like, man, at some point I want to do comedy. Especially when I would see the stand-up comedians on their shows. And then in college, I was like, I'm gonna do comedy. I don't know when, but even though I was studying computer science, I'm like, I'm gonna do comedy at some point. Who knows? And then once I was in working in computer science for a while and doing IT stuff, I said it was like right before my 25th birthday, and I said, and I saw this article from I think it was like Buddy Hackett or somebody, and it said like my biggest regret in life was waiting till I was 30 to do stand-up comedy. And once I read that, like something just went off, and I'm like, yeah, what am I waiting for? And I signed up for like this comedy class, and then like it wasn't particularly helpful to like tell jokes, but it was good to like get me out of my shell and like just because I was afraid to do it. But once I did it for the first time, I was like, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. I absolutely knew.
Awesome. How often do you guys do stand up now?
Every night. Put a microphone in my hand. I'll do it right now. I mean, it's all I ever want to do is do stand up. It's why we started Cooligans. You know, as comedians, you only work from 7 o'clock on, and you're the people who make it, and that aren't just like sort of plucked out of the scene and immediate stars. They're the ones who become as productive as possible at all other times to forward their careers. And I had an agent at the time who was like, what are you known for? And I said, I don't know. And he was like, well, why would somebody call you? Why would one of your friends reach out to you? Or why would another comedian call you or text you? Like if something happened, they're like, I got to talk to Alexis, and not comedy. What else? And I was like, probably soccer and food. And he was like, all right, during the day, work on that. Work on soccer and food, continue to build that brand. And then at night, just continue to do stand-up. And then both of those, they should help each other. And soccer was Cooligans was one of those situations where I wanted to do something in soccer during the day. And Christian, also another hilarious comedian, also loves soccer. Another Latino like me. I just saw so many parallels there that I was like, all right, that'll help. Like if we build the fan base in Cooligans, they'll come out to see us perform, Little did we know that the ratio would switch, and now Cooligans is sort of the driver of our careers, but it's all still to feed comedy.
So how did you find out that you both did comedy and loved soccer, similarly?
We both each had individual podcasts. I used to do this podcast about, I used to talk to comedians about how they dealt with relationships. Alexis did one where they would break down like a comedian's bit and like sort of where it came from and get the background on it. So we each did each other's podcast. We did like a simulcast thing. And the time we did that, we played FIFA. And then I just like waxed them in FIFA and we talked about soccer. And then
front of my wife.
And then probably that was like the longest conversation we ever really had. We always saw each other at shows and things like that, but we never really had long conversations. And then after that, about a year later, NYCFC started. Now we're talking going. He mentioned the soccer idea that he had, and at the time I was working on like a live sketch show and doing I was writing a show. I was filming a lot of stuff, and I was like doing all the things that we're basically doing now with Cooligans. And I was just in a place where I'm like, I just want to make stuff, and because I was like kind of in this sad, depressed state of where my stand-up career was, because I was just like trying and like, but it's really difficult to catch any breaks. And that's how we discovered our love of soccer.
I got him when he was weak.
And you started in somebody's kitchen?
In my kitchen was the first. Well, the first thing we did was, I think, 2 man on the street videos. And Christian was in this mode of like, I want to be behind the camera. I want to be behind the camera. I don't want to be on camera. So he was sort of like directing and producing the videos, and it was just me talking to people. We didn't really have any idea of what to do. We wanted to do everything. But when someone says like, we'll do whatever, it's like when your girl's like, I don't care, I'll eat anything. And you're like, all right, let's go get Chinese. Oh, I don't want that. It's like, that was kind of like where we were, It was like, we'll do whatever. And I was like, let's do this. And Christian's like, I don't like that. And I'm like, and Christian's like, let's do this. And I was like, nah, I don't know how we're going to like do that. So the easiest thing was get a camera, get a tripod. We both had that. Get a microphone. We had that. Get audio equipment. We had that. All right, well, let's go on the street and talk to people. We're comedians. We'll make it work. And that's the first 2 videos were Man on the Street stuff. And then we said, let's do a podcast as well. We have time during the day. We met in my kitchen. I already had the podcast equipment, and so did he. We put it all together. And from the beginning, I could tell that the podcast was sort of going to take the front seat, because videos are very hard to produce, especially with our schedules at the time. And, we're comedians living in New York City. Like, comedians don't get paid a lot of money. We weren't making a lot of money, and we had to figure out a way to keep paying our rent. So my wife didn't leave me, and his girl didn't leave him. And, like, just trying to sort of balance all of that, the podcast became the simplest thing to do, which is it immediately sort of fits what we do best, with talking into microphones. And it's super simple to produce and put up. And it was relatively inexpensive at $15 a month for our hosting. So we just sort of focused heavily on that, because we could tell from the beginning that was going to take precedence. And here we are.
I'm in the same boat. I'm a real estate agent here, along with like 7,000 other people. And so I do that. Yeah. And then I do the podcasting on the side, because I know that's where the big money is.
Absolutely. What city are you in?
Charleston, South Carolina.
That's right. Charleston, South Carolina, which is like, people say that that's like the New York City of South Carolina, right? Like, that's where all the tourists and stuff go to.
Yeah, it's called the Holy City, and it's got like this downtown big peninsula with water all around it, and very historic. And yeah, it's huge for tourism here. You got cruise ships going out of here. Yeah, there's a lot of films are filmed here, like The Notebook, and I can't think what else. The one with Mel Gibson when he was in the Revolutionary War.
Patriot.
The Patriot, yeah. A ton of movies are filmed here.
By the way, Holy City, a bit much. I'm not going to lie to you.
Oh, really? They say that because in the downtown area, there's like 140-something churches. You can see the steeples and the skyline.
Jeez.
So even our soccer team, Charleston Battery, they had jerseys redone, I think starting last year or the year before. This a Holy City FC. So pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Ozzy Alonso. You guys have always had Cuban defectors.
Yeah, we had Michael Chang that played for Salt Lake. And they just won it with the Monarchs in USL.
Right.
Justin
Ozzy
Portillo.
Alonso played for you guys.
Yep. Ozzy Alonso, Lamar Nagel, I think.
Well, then you're holy to me.
Yeah, so I was telling Christian, we actually have a new owner, and the old owner decided to sell the land so they could build condos, and sold all the memorabilia and sold the team to a new ownership group. So we had to move to a college stadium, and they're revamping it. So I'm excited to see the big change. Have you all ever been to Charleston?
I have not. I've driven through it.
You need to come here for a game. I saw Christian was in Charlotte.
We both were.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we both were.
I saw an interview on a news station that you did.
Right. Yeah, that was really fun. Yeah, it was my first time doing like local news, and they were cool. Luckily, one of the hosts was like, I forgot her name, but she knew soccer. She played like, I think in high school or something. And so she was like she got it, which was great, because most of the time you see comedians do these like local news and they barely know what's going on. It's a segment that they're just trying to get through.
Yeah, it's really weird being a soccer fan in America, and especially with watching it. I feel like there's so much soccer that you can watch if you really get into it. It's can be a little obsessive.
Yeah, there's times when my wife will walk by the TV and she's like, "Is soccer on just all day?"
Yeah, my wife is like, "When does it end? Like, when is it not in season?"
Never, baby.
Never, baby. Exactly.
So, I think Alexis, you support Arsenal. Is that correct?
Yeah, huge Arsenal fan.
And then Christian, you
Everton.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think when you started, maybe you were mainly a MLS fan. Or you've
always been... I never picked a Premier League team. I didn't really watch it. Honestly, my introduction to soccer was mostly MLS. I used to go to MetroStars games. That was like one of my friends who introduced me to the sport. Obviously, from playing FIFA got me into it, and then he would bring me to like those like ICC matches that before ICC existed. And the first game I ever saw was Real Madrid against Roma at Giant Stadium, and I saw Luis Figo, Zidane, Roberto Carlos, Gabriel Batistuta, all these legendary figures, and I had no clue who anybody was. I was just like, okay, I sort of recognize that guy from FIFA or whatever. And then after that,
but luckily MLS is the same level, so you've been able to keep.
Exactly. As soon as I started going to MetroStars games, I'm like, okay, why? That Real Madrid versus Roma game was, I paid too much for it. Quality was so low. No, I started going to MetroStars games, and it was like weird to be in a 60,000 seat stadium with like 8,000 people. It was odd, but I enjoyed it, but I never felt connected to the team or the league. I saw it as like a thing to do on the weekend because my friend would bring me, and we would get like these 3-game a season packages, But then once I started really watching the Premier League more, and like when it came to NBC in I don't know what 2014, 13, something like that, and then when we started the podcast, I'm like, oh, I got to pick a Premier League team. I was a huge fan of Tim Howard especially after the World Cup, and I'm like, oh, Everton has American players. They had Landon Donovan, so I'm like, all right, I'm gonna pick this team because
we don't talk about Landon Donovan on this podcast. He's actually blocked me on Twitter.
Amazing.
Has he really?
Yeah, because I was razzing him, so that's my claim to fame.
Good job.
But you picked Everton.
I mean, the legendary San Diego loyal owner, Landon Donovan. We love him.
Right.
I guess what got me about him was all the when he was taking the penalty kicks and would be kissing his wrists and doing all that sort of business. I didn't like that. That could have rubbed me.
You're just not a fan?
Not a fan of wrist kissing.
Suarez?
Yes, I'm not a fan of getting bit either.
Yeah.
He's been doing pretty good, though. He hasn't bit anybody in a while.
I know, right? I think the pills are working out.
Yeah, they are.
Pills.
And so how did you become an Arsenal fan?
Because they're the greatest team on God's given earth.
Not right now.
I believe all of the churches in Charleston should be given an Arsenal crest. The Holy Club. No, when I was a kid, like that was the time just before like the Invincibles and all of that. But people started talking about soccer around me. I grew up around a lot of like Caribbean people, around a lot of Portuguese and Brazilians. So like soccer was like always sort of around. And as a Cuban, like I'm like, I know it, I see it, but we pick up the ball, we throw a curve. That's what we do. But like as I was hanging out with my friends, there was a bar that was equidistant to where we would hang out. And downtown Newark was like desolate, like crack era desolate. But this one bar was always packed. So we would go in there to use the bathroom, and they would give us water because we were kids on like bikes and stuff. And they were a bunch of Irish guys, and they were all rooting for Manchester United. And they would make fun of us so much that I said, oh, I'm going to be a fan of the other team, which happened to be Arsenal. And that was it. That's how I picked Arsenal. And, over time, they would make fun of me for the team. And that's kind of how I learned. Like they would say like, oh, Anelka is going to leave the team, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, we have a player named Anelka, like that's how I learned, because there was like no real internet for that. Maybe there was, but I didn't know about it. Like it was just hard to find that information. And little by little, I remember one year, one of the guys came back from Europe and he brought an Arsenal jersey for me. And that was it. Like that, from that moment, I was hooked. And that was it. Like that, playing FIFA only made it bigger. And then once I started being able to find the games on like cable and stuff like that was all I needed. And I just became hooked. And then when it came to NBC, I finally got to like watch every match as opposed to find out about the information sometimes later, which is great. And as comics, we can't really watch like Liga MX, or sometimes it's hard to watch MLS games because we're on stage at night. But in the morning, other than the 7:30 matches, it's pretty easy to wake up for them.
You guys collect jerseys. I think, Christian, you do. Is that correct?
I wouldn't even say I collect them like consciously. I have a lot, right? And ever since we've been doing the show and people keep sending us stuff, it's more difficult to keep this stuff in order. But
although if they're listening, keep sending. Okay.
I think I heard your brother used to send you some or bring you some back.
Yeah, so my brother, he plays professional handball, but he would travel all over the world playing. And I was always playing FIFA, so he knew I was into soccer. And he would get me a jersey from every city he went to. So that was always my connection to it, where I'm like, I felt like I was traveling with him to some degree. So that was a big reason of why I started caring about the sport, and then I started like I have an Anderlecht kit, I have a Belgium kit, I have a Thierry Henry kit from like the early 2000s, a bunch of stuff. So that was always great, and it just made me care more about the sport because he would always bring me stuff from wherever he was traveling.
I was impressed to hear that you have a Marseille jersey because I used to live there.
Oh yeah, I have one as well. Yeah. My brother.
Also, you lived in the North of France. Awesome.
Yeah, I did. No, it's the Charleston of France.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother speaks a little bit of French. He studied it a lot in high school. So he was always excited to go to France, and when he was able to play in France, and he played handball in Belgium as well. Yeah, so he loves all that stuff. So it was dope. He's been able to like connect me with those cultures.
Yeah, I was a Baptist missionary in Marseille for 2 years. So, and I even bought a season ticket for OM, Olympique de Marseille, before they like closed in the stadium. It was amazing. I mean, that's probably the loudest stadium I've ever been to.
Yeah, so many supporters that they have 2 stands, right? One on each end.
Yeah, but I did not sit there. I sat there when I first started going, but my season ticket was on the kind of like on the other side, away from the benches, because the Flares, I mean, they would just brawl, and it was kind of scary at times, like looking over there, and there would be like some guy that did something wrong or was in the wrong section, and they compete against each other's supporters groups, and so
yeah.
It's kind of scary in the ends back there. But yeah,
let's go.
I've been to Old Trafford. I've been to Goodison. From when I lived there, I would travel up there. I'm a Manchester United fan, mainly because of David Beckham. David, if you're listening.
Yeah.
So Old Trafford's pretty dope. And I took the train from Manchester with a friend to Liverpool and got to see Everton play against Fulham. When I guess Tim Howard was there, and then I got to see Fulham play against Manchester United when Dempsey was playing. So that was pretty awesome.
That's really great. Dope.
And when I saw them play at Craven Cottage, I actually bought a Fulham membership just so I could get a ticket. And I sat in the Fulham section and had to keep my mouth shut the whole game.
For sure.
Hilarious.
So what was your goal for the podcast when you started it and to where you are now?
My goal was to get a bunch of free jerseys and be on TV. So success. No, I think when we started, I think Christian, maybe I don't know that we ever really like have answered this or spoke about it. I don't know that we have like the same thing, but in my head, I saw a bunch of people who like comedy and soccer will hear of us and will come to see us perform on the road and we'll have fans in cities. And as comics, you're one of your goals is to be able to sell tickets on the road. So I was just kind of constantly trying to find a way to make myself more of a draw on the road. And I thought this will do it. And it'll be people that I want, you always want your fans to be people you want to hang out with. And I want to hang out with soccer fans. Right. So I'm like, look, no one else is doing it. No one else is talking to these people. At least the way I would want to be spoken to, in a funny way, not just clever and stuff or formations. And I'm glad those things exist, but what we do. So I thought people who appreciate my loud ass will come see me perform. You know what I mean? And it's been absolutely incredible just to see how wrong I was and how right I was.
Yeah, I think when we started, because I'm the more pragmatic and less loud one of the two.
You don't say.
I was more focused on establishing I don't mind the work, the consistency, and I was more focused on Alexis was we could be have a video channel and be like a soccer conglomerate type thing, like a business. Yeah, like a big brand. And I'm like, relax, dude. We can't. We just gotta, hit publish on the podcast first. So,
yeah.
So I think
I was looking at corner offices. I went in.
So I think that's why we have a good balance, because he might be, he can think of stuff like that where my mind doesn't go there because I'm just like, I just want to chip away at stuff. But it's good to have those like big hopes and big dreams. And from, I just wanted to put out a podcast consistently and then put out videos and basically get stronger at the things that we were already pretty good at, right? We were good on podcasts. We can improvise with each other well and make jokes. And it just happens to be that we're talking about soccer. But realistically, we could probably be talking about anything and it'd still be as entertaining and still fun. But the fact that the soccer angle was almost this weird, like, serendipitous miracle because we get so many messages from people. I literally just got an email like 30 minutes ago from a Gully Squad member that was like, hey, man, thank you for everything you do for American soccer and helping grow the game. And that is the thing that I did not expect. I didn't think people would be so grateful because comedians in America do not talk about the sport. They show it.
At least not in a glowing way. Yeah.
Yeah, if they do, they mock it. So that was the unexpected thing of like people being like, man, I've been waiting for something like this for a long time. So that was like the really nice surprise.
What's been the coolest thing that's happened, since you started the podcast and the TV show?
There's been a bunch. I don't know that I have a coolest. I think just from a bird's eye perspective, Christian and I go to a lot of events, and I think I'm the one who sort of picks up on it most. But every year, like the first thing we did was someone was like, "Why don't you guys go to MLS Cup? Apply as media." It was one of our fans, and I said to Christian, I'm like, "Why didn't we think of that?" It's like the first year we had a podcast. Yeah, let's apply as media. We're media, and I was somehow. And I'm not going to say explicitly how, but we finessed our way into getting media passes. Maybe we had people call and pretend to be assistants and flight managers and whatnot. But we somehow found our way into MLS Cup events. And then there we found out about like VIP parties and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going to just start pressing everyone I know until we get these passes. And we got accepted, and we would walk in and we would tell people, they'd be like, who are you guys? And I'm like, we're comedians and we're doing a soccer podcast. And they're like, oh, that's cool. And the next event, some people were like, don't you guys do a podcast? And then the next year, people are like, hey, it's those guys who do podcast. And now it's like, oh, cool. Cooligans are also here. Or like, oh, I was hoping you guys would be here. It's like those incremental steps. And it's not so much about like personal growth or like accomplishments for Christian and I or myself. It's about like normalizing joking about soccer in a positive way and making it so that, because I don't think I expected to have to also fight inside the business for relevancy. I thought the fans would have to be like, wait, you guys are comedians talking about soccer? Like, what are you going to say? I thought the players and the executives would all be like, this is amazing, more. Yeah. And what we found is they're just as insulated as some of the fans are. So we've had to sort of, toot our own horn or put our case out there, both inside the business and to the fans. And I think that seeing that now the executives are starting to come on board and people are starting to understand that there could be potentially positives to having comedians talk about soccer in a funny way and slightly roasting the sport, but doing it from a place of love. To me, that's been the most unexpected, that I had to do that, but that it's starting to actually happen.
Oh my goodness. When I heard that SC Cincinnati joke that you did, I was dying.
Yeah. It felt bad for that to be the first one, but it felt like it needed to happen.
Because we used to play them in USL, and we did not like them, as the word I'll use. But when they went up to MLS, everyone was making fun of them because they had never won a title, and we had beat them. So that was the big thing. We just did not like Cincinnati and Orlando,
nice.
Just like the Atlanta fans. I'm an Atlanta United fan myself, so.
Yeah, there's a big overlap between Charleston and Atlanta fans, right?
Yeah, and actually when Atlanta United started, they Bocanegra and the staff were here and kind of formed a partnership with Charleston Battery. So we were the second team until they started Atlanta United too. So
y'all were like the affiliate.
Yeah, they sent us the goalkeeper from Greece, and they sent us Carlton and the German kid and Patrick Okonkwo. So yeah, it was good for a while, and then they made their own team. So I don't know. There's positive and negatives with everything, I guess.
At least for me, one of the cool things has been, and another thing we didn't talk about or really plan on was the connection to women's soccer in the U.S. We just thought like, oh, it'd be cool to talk to some funny soccer players, and if they happen to be women, cool. But then the whole Ali Krieger and Ashton Harris saga has been changed our lives. It's been like I don't think she understands how she's changed our lives by just like by sitting down with us to do a podcast like January of last year.
Who, Ali?
Yeah, when Ali said that. So and then there's just been this wave of women and men who are fans or whatever who appreciate that we're talking to female soccer players, and I mean we get all these like they're just like thank you for talking to them. They're really it's cool to see this side of their personalities and things like that.
There was a kid who was like, thanks so much for talking to Ali, like she's just a soccer player, and I'm like, what? Like like why would we talk to her in any other like to us? I guess maybe Christian and I are just like, whatever. If you like, we talk to female comics the same way as they were male comics. So for me, I don't care what you have between your legs. If you do this one thing, I'm going to talk to you that way. Female chef or male chef, it doesn't matter to me. I treat everyone the same. So to hear a child say that, or and the parent was so excited for her to talk to us, it was just like it really touched me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and me having a daughter as well, I really think they're great role models for our young women growing up, and I don't know, where else they would look for that outside the home, but it's a good example for them, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the excitement when we interviewed Megan Rapinoe in Charlotte. I mean, I look, I get it. They just won a World Cup, so like, there's going to be an additional, but like the fever pitch, I'm like, dude, is One Direction gonna get on stage? Like, it was just
wish.
like this. It was like this. I mean, personally, a big fan. But,
me too.
I'm more of a BTS guy, but whatever.
Yeah,
you would be.
You could be a fan of both. No, but it was like the energy was like just. It's hard to explain, but like I'm like, y'all didn't get this excited for me. You know what I mean? Like it was just like this. Like, is she here? Is she here? Is she here? It was like this. Like it. I can't even explain it, but it's so exciting to watch.
Is there anyone that you could interview in the soccer community that you haven't yet that you really want to?
I mean, David Beckham, Landon Donovan.
We're gonna ask him, why are you blocking Dell? Don't do it, man.
Don Garber, Sunil Gulati, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just met Don Garber. I mean, we've met him a couple times, but we took a photo with him the other day. And
wait, you weren't in the famous photo, were you?
No. Oh my God,
Meek Mill and Peyton Manning.
J Balvin.
I would love. It's a personal goal to be in Meek Mill's IG. So the fact that we got to meet someone who was, we're just closer to getting that.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously those big stars. I mean, it'd be cool to talk to a couple of European players. Honestly, like Lukaku, Memphis Depay. I want to talk to him about his rap career. The guy is like, he puts out rap videos regularly, which is just crazy.
Oh, speaking of which, I actually was listening, I think, to your first episode of your podcast when you mentioned the skip to my Lukaku reference. I wanted to just tell you I got it.
All right, cool, man.
A little late, right? Oh
well. Yeah, I mean, we've the fact that we've spoken to the people that we have, even like obviously having a TV show makes things a lot easier to like booking guests and stuff like that. But I'll always show a huge amount of gratitude to Juan Agudelo. Juan Agudelo was our first official player, active player that did our show. And that gave us an immense amount of just credibility. He was like, and that was like, we went to MLS Cup and he happened to be at an event there and he was like, oh yeah, I heard of you guys. And that like blew our minds. We're like, a player knows who we are? Like, that's just crazy. And
but it was so funny because we didn't want to go talk to him, remember? And me and Christian were like, we should go talk to him. No, we don't want to bother him. No, he's on his phone. Oh, he's talking to someone. And we just kept like moving closer and closer and closer to Juan Agudelo. So eventually, we're just two guys staring at Juan Agudelo. And then he looks at us and we're like, we were like, let's be funny. And we just made him laugh as hard as we could and constantly made him laugh. And then he's like, man, you guys are hilarious. And I'm like, we're both comedians and we have a podcast. Do you want to be on it? And he said yes. And that changed a lot for us. Like, there's been a lot that changed everything. But that was the first moment where I could look at it and go, oh, this is real.
Yeah, because it's like, I think the people, especially early on, were like comedians and talking about soccer. The skepticism was through the roof. People were just like, no, I don't know what you guys do. I don't know what kind of jokes you make. And that's how people are with comedians in general, right? Like, it's a very subjective art form where, you can like one comedian and another person can absolutely despise him or her. And that's how it was with everyone in the soccer world. They were like, what? They were just like at arm's length at all times because they didn't know what we were about. And then once they started hearing a couple interviews, then they were comfortable and realizing that, like, oh, we actually do love the game. We love American soccer. We're here to support it and show that the American soccer player has a personality, because they're not on. Why aren't American soccer players on late night? Why on Jimmy Fallon's show or Conan O'Brien? Like that should be the case because they're as impressive athletes as any of the others.
Carpool karaoke with Julian Gressel.
Why not?
Hey, so one of my last questions I have here is about pizza. Why do you love pizza so much?
Why don't you, dude? No, how could you not love the perfect food? I grew up around a lot of pizza, and I think one of the things that I knew from early on that made me stand out versus someone else when it comes to food is that I really want to take the time to understand how food is layered and how you taste it, and each individual part. I think a lot of people just eat food and be like, that was good. And I'm like, okay, that's certainly one way. I want to go to the next level, more of a pro, So I wanted, was the bread good? Was this good? Was that good? And pizza is one of those things that's so simple, it's actually hard to make really, really well. It's easy to make bad, and I've had it all over the country, but it's really hard to make it exactly right. And it's one of those things that you have to keep chasing. Like, dough is alive. People don't realize that. Dough has yeast in it. Like, it's alive. It's really hard. Like, temperature, everything changes. The humidity levels in the room, everything makes it different and the outcome different. And it's one of those things that you'll never get perfect. To me, it's a lot like a joke. There's no such thing as a perfect joke. But if you're really a comedian, you'll constantly chase that perfect joke. And it's what we all want. And pizza's like the same way. And it tastes great. So, and we do it better than anywhere else in the world here in New York. So why not,
I'll shock you right now and tell you that I've never been to New York City, but I've been to like 11 countries. It's really weird.
Okay. I feel like you could drive maybe 6 hours north, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, and if you are in New York, it is like visiting like 40 countries. So yeah, you should make it time to come here.
Yeah, every train station they stamp your passport here.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you guys go. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to get to talk to you. I look up to you guys and appreciate, like the other person said, all you do for soccer in the United States, and want to keep in touch and excited for where you will continue to go with the TV show and the podcast.
Thank you so much, man. And if we ever need to buy real estate in Charleston, South Carolina, we know who to go to.
Definitely. That's all I ask.
No, thank you so much, man. I've always seen you. You've always interacted with us on Twitter for a long time. So you're always a name I always remember. So, but thank you for the love, man. And best of luck to you going forward, man.
Awesome.
And we appreciate what you're doing for American soccer, because every podcast matters.
Definitely.
All podcasts matter.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Thanks.